All right, team. Very good morning. I hope you're all doing very well indeed. Welcome to a brand new month. So continued discipline is really the approach for the month ahead. Friday didn't really go as per the plan based on the technicals, but that's trading, unfortunately. A couple of positions taken, nothing really to scream about. But nevertheless, a new month, as we say, so we get straight back into it as always. So the DXY. The beautiful DXY. Where can we forecast DXY to go? Well, rejecting that higher time frame weekly order block. So for me now, are we really going to be pushing bullish up to these highs with the fundamentals coming out in the market? It's as it is, to be honest. It's still neither here nor there. However, what we can do is certainly rely on those technicals, have a look at that higher time frame weekly order block, recognize that we are rejecting it to those highs. So potentially maybe we're in the room or in the realms, I should say, for a bit of DXY weakness, more so than DXY strength. Let's take a look. So weekly 50 MA rejected that weekly 50 MA last week beautifully, to be quite honest. It's what we would be expecting to see, supporting short by that higher time frame weekly order block as well. It completely makes sense. Going down for the time frames, nothing really for us to refine just yet. We're still in what I believe could be a range, and you can see that bottom right hand chart. It looks pretty obvious. We're no longer trending. We're just moving to those highs, moving to those lows. We've identified them, so we can look to manipulate that. However, the 4 hour time frame is, in my opinion, painting the picture quite well. Ordinarily, since we can identify the range specifically on that daily time frame, we'd want to really see a daily candle close above or below that daily range. Now, when we don't get that, of course, this wick below on that daily time frame, rejecting that daily 50 MA, what we can see and what we can say about that is the fact that we have potentially broken that range to the downside. We use our technicals to understand that range behavior, and we can understand just here that we've now broken below that 4 hour range, and we've made a low potentially into a lower high potentially. Order block selection supported short by that 4 hour 50 MA. So there is every reason to believe we could indeed continue rolling towards that downside. Of course, the caveat to that being that daily 50 MA, where price is rejected on Friday, and there is every possibility that we could look to reject that again today before a little bit of a bullish push, perhaps from that daily 50 MA back up to the 4 hour 50 MA. If the range is set, then of course we won't be looking to respect that 4 hour 50 MA. It's more than likely we push into it, give it a rejection, and then start to push through. However, with that said, there is an order block supporting our thought process short. So at the moment, until that happens, I now have what I'd be looking for on any other pair based on range bound market price action. I'll be waiting for that 4 hour candle to close below, pull back into an area of interest before looking to short. Again, another bit of a cause for concern is we can quite understand where, if it is a range or even if it's not a range, another opportunity where the DXY could want to push up to. There is a 4 hour order block up at those highs. We're fine within the range, but if we have now broken out of the range, that looks like quite decent price action. Lower high waiting for a lower low continuation. So there's a couple of thought processes there, but what we'll do is revert to technicals for now, as always, and see what price action is doing. So when we use all that information, put that onto the 15-minute time frame, what we can see is just the exaggerated break of that structure on the 4 hour time frame. We now can see a beautiful low created in the market. Again, with that said, once we refine this 4 hour order block down, we're up at those highs, of which we would be looking to say, okay, with the break of structure, the leg in itself, the extension has come from those highs. Can we look to refine that area down? I'm sure we can, but until we get there, I'm not going to go in that level of detail just yet. We'll look to analyze what we have at this time in the market. So based on most basic price action and structure on that 15-minute time frame, you can see we are making those very intricate and actually quite nice. We've got those low in the market, lower high into the 15-minute order block, lower low created, and no other 15-minute order block available. However, once we come back up here, could potentially be that lower high area for the rejection short, supported by the fact price is failing to break and close above that 4 hour 50 MA. And when I superimpose this on the chart, you can see exactly where we are. So for now, it certainly does make sense. So what we can look to identify is a bit of a trading range. If I put a session low in the market, or just call it an order block, in fact, since there is one there, we have a bit of a nice trading range on the DXY, which is always good to see. So forget for a moment the fact that the overall trading range, of course, would be the highs and lows of this range. If we're incorrect, then what we can say is, well, the trading range could be between these 15-minute order blocks. So let's see if price is going to respect that 15-minute order block short. Potentially, what I'd be looking to see then is a break of Asia, a little break of structure, pull back into that point of interest before looking to then short a potential cross pair on the DXY, or go long on again, go long on the cross pair. So that's the analysis for the DXY. I think it's pretty, it's not every element is straightforward, but combined, there are a couple of reasons why things could go left as opposed to right and vice versa. So that's what we got for the immediacy. So let's look at UJ for now. So UJ, the fact that potentially, what did we say? DXY has every reason to push slightly higher. There's a couple of places on the DXY, a couple of points of interest looking to go higher before looking for a turnaround short. Can we see similarly on UJ where we would be potentially interested on a short? So higher time frame, weekly order block, good news, looking to travel to those highs of that weekly order block before looking for a reaction. If you look to the top right hand chart, that's a weekly time frame as always. And if I put that on all intervals for a second, you guys are able to see exactly where we are currently looking for a short position. So we are definitely up at towards those highs of that weekly order block. We start to refine those areas down. Nothing there on the daily, however, 4 hour. We've got a nice 4 hour order block up at those highs. Why do I say it's nice? Well, we've certainly made that high in the market. That's evident, potentially coming out of the range. As a result of then potential higher low, we've been left behind a nice 4 hour order block. Price tapped in, didn't, well, price rejected it, but we are looking for price to travel slightly higher. So when we are looking for a potential entry there on UJ, we have to be quite careful to understand that actually we could simply be entering when price is in the phase of making that higher high. However, with that said, we use the confluence from the DXY to understand whether or not the DXY is now looking to short from that area and or from its own point of interest up at those highs, and then we'll use that confluence accordingly to potentially look for a short. So once we superimpose all of that on the charts, look to refine those areas down right up at the highs, exactly where we want to be. You can see my alert is just below, nothing in too much of a hurry. I'll be waiting for price to come up into that area, give me a decent, well, we've got a couple of scenarios. Worst case scenario, of course, is price just comes straight back up, doesn't give you any real break of structure immediately from that area, first and foremost. And then the question will be, well, do I enter immediately? So I'll be looking to identify some structure points on the way up, potentially, before looking to say, okay, it's the start of the week, I'll take it nice and easy, wait for price to break those structure points, come back into a point of interest before looking to go short. So of course that's the best type of play. And then the worst case scenario would be, of course, price still rolling up into that area, and then you want to take it slightly more aggressively based on the fact where DXY is, and recognize that if it is a short-term move on the DXY, then you want to be looking to get into a short-term looking position sooner rather than later on the crosspair that you're using the confluence with. So therefore, hey there, Boris. Very good morning, my friend. I hope you're doing well. Just went over the DXY to be fair. I'm sure you'll be able to work it out in the immediacy, but we're just looking at UJ now. Just so I won't make this video incredibly long for anyone looking to rewatch it, but I hope you're doing well, my friend, and looking for a potential turnaround on UJ, perhaps, based on the fact that I believe the DXY is now giving more bearish signs than bullish signs. We've had that break below the range, pull back into a nice point of interest, supported short by the 4 hour 50 MA. We just have to see how the cookie crumbles as price looks to come back potentially to those refined areas couple of areas up at the highs for the DXY to potentially reject short from. And then with that said, we can see how we rejected that weekly order block to those highs of that wick last week. So it's kind of looking good for weakness on the DXY. Immediate strength could look to people trade as a result of price pushing back up to those points of interest. But the bias has certainly flipped somewhat. We are rejecting that weekly order block, weekly 50 MA. It's looking quite good for a bit of DXY weakness, and then we've refined two areas down, looking to trade between potentially this 15-minute order block or this kind of session high in the area that's already been mitigated that caused that immediate low in the market there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see price return back to these areas before looking to take that rejection short. However, the most recent low of the market has been created from this area, haven't closed and broken above it, therefore it's still pretty relevant. Doesn't mean I'd be looking for an immediate cross pair position just because price is in around that area, but I'll be understanding to see how does price react to even a more refined area within that 15-minute order block. We can see we've got another 15-minute order block just here. So if I put that in the market and expect for price to want to gravitate towards it, we'll see exactly how price reacts when it reaches there. And on to UJ, we've got a very similar look in play. So just went over the worst case scenario in terms of not having a break of structures, price looks to trend up. Alternatively, when price gets up to those highs, once you've used the DXY as a bit of confluence, you could look for an aggressive 1 minute break of structure short. Depends all on your risk appetite. And then just having a look now to see what is against the position. We've certainly got a lot for it based on the higher time frame order blocks weekly. Nothing on the daily just yet. We haven't really approached it. Where's my crosshair? Where are we? Where are we? Up at those highs on the daily, so we're still up here. So a couple of areas on UJ where price could look to react. And with that said, as we mentioned, or as I mentioned just previously, after this high in the market, higher low, here has all the elements to actually be an entry on or as the UJ is about to make a higher high. So we'll have a look to see if price reacts or respects that. If not, then all the way up at these highs, which we're then up at the highs of that daily order block, which is also a nice place to look to short from. Already refined area on that 15-minute time frame as well. As we start to zoom all the way back, we can see that is a move that we're pretty much interested in all that time to take the short position from. So it's a little bit premature perhaps, but we'll see how price looks to respect that 4-hour order block. That admittedly is in the middle of nowhere, but we're using the DXY. It could make sense. So a bit of a tentative approach. We'll see how we get on. And then with that said, we can see how price never came back at all to all these areas. And the NUJ's just trickled its way back up to those highs. Bit of a shame, but potentially if price gets up to those real highs, then I'll be looking for, I'd say, an aggressive position, but I still will wait for a bit of a break of structure, certainly on the 1 minute break of structure before looking to take that short. So some good opportunities, I think, potentially lining up for the week ahead. So that's UJ. US dollar CAD. Let's have a look to see what we have with US dollar CAD. Again, we've got that 4-hour order block, but I think here's a little bit more conclusive as to why I want to use that 4-hour order block. So if I zoom all the way to the left, we had this 4-hour order block initially that, again, you could argue is in the middle of nowhere as a result of it not quite being in that higher time frame weekly order block, as we can see here. And as a result of that move, we can see the rejection that we've had from the weekly 50 MA and we closed below it. So it's really good news to see on US dollar CAD. So again, if price wants to trickle its way back up there, I'm going to expect a rejection of that weekly 50 MA this week as a result of last week's weekly candle closing bearish below. So the weekly 50 MA is definitely doing its job. Daily 50 MA is not really part of the party at the moment as it's quite a considerable distance away from price action. So that's fine. I'll be looking to trade down towards that alongside the weekly 50 MA supporting the short. And then, of course, in the immediacy, as price wants to start moving to those highs, we are going to have a target of the 4-hour 50 MA. But as you can see by my circle, I believe that this, as I said, this 4-hour order block means a little bit more than it does on UJ because we have had what we can consider as a break of structure of some sort. Certainly, it looks good on the 4-hour time frame, but definitely on the 15, we've certainly broken all structure points that were created on the way up. So therefore, if we got a break of structure, we're going to understand where it was the first low in the market. as well as that supporting that thought process, break of the 4-hour 50 EMA, broke below it, lower high, potential lower low continuation. And then with the DXY, we have to understand, well, does that make sense? Looking for DXY shorts coming out of the market. Well, potentially not from this area, but if we were to go up at these highs, this 4-hour order block that also broke structures to the downside based on the same 4-hour candle principle that we've just disclosed, then it would make sense to look for a short. So immediate, potentially DXY weakness, or it could just be DXY strength coming all the way back up. And we'd be looking for a nice US dollar CAD short from these highs. So I think it makes good sense. In the immediacy, am I interested in longing US dollar CAD? Well, at the moment, not really. Would have to see some considerable breaks of structure to the highs without price then coming up into these areas. What I mean by that is, of course, we've got a potential high in the market, higher low. We didn't make a low, so this is a higher low. Can we see price break this order block? Potential snap of the area, retest some of these areas in line with the 4-hour 50 EMA before looking to long it up into that higher time frame point of interest that we'd be looking to look for a short from. At the moment, don't have any available 50-minute order blocks. I will put this on just to see how price is going to look to respect it. I'll put an alert slightly above it. And then we'll see if price comes down to these lows after breaking this structure point, then potentially there is an opportunity to long up to the area that would be looking to short from. So I quite like US dollar CAD actually, hence why it's up the top somewhat. And I think, yeah, as I said, looks for potential a good trading opportunity in potentially both directions. Much prefer the short, based on the overall thought process of the DXY. So it's looking all right. GU. GU. A bit unfortunate with GU, but what we can, I mean, on Friday that is, but nevertheless, what we can see is price is just gravitating towards the best selling opportunity. Why is it the best? Well, it's up at the highs for a fact, and we can just eyeball on the 50-minute time frame that price made a high from here. Price has been taken out from that move up at the highs. So of course, when price wants to gravitate back up to those highs, I'm expecting a reaction. And then it's down to me to see what I have supporting that 15-minute process if we do it in the opposite direction. So weekly time frame. What do we have? Well, weekly 50 MA is not part of the party. That's fair to say. We've rejected it a couple of weeks back, but nevertheless, prices are distant away. When we start to refine some other areas on the daily time frame, well, the most recent daily order block caused as a result of this bearish engulfing candle, we're trading out of it. So it's good news at the moment, but what we want to do is push as high as we possibly can within that area. And what we have is this area just here at the moment. So not really as high as we possibly can, but at least we're towards the equilibrium of it, towards the middle of that GAM box. But with that said, we still then revert to price action. We've had that break of structure, but what we can see just by eyeballing it again is that we do have some highs in the market here, and we can quite understand why price wants to gravitate towards those highs and towards those lows, even if there isn't an order block there. So that's just telling me, well, not to be too aggressive in terms of a limit order, because it's the best looking opportunity now, but but price didn't get there. Well, it was the best opportunity, I would say, last week as a result of seeing price break that structure. But now what we have to identify, of course, is we are higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, and higher lows into that area. So hopefully price prints nice 15-minute structure points on the way up, break of structure, imbalance, look for the short. And I think that'll be a nice looking position. Daily 50 EMA supporting the short position down. Friday's daily candle pushed up, rejected it. That's what we expect to see from 50 EMAs. So of course, when price is pushing above that EMA now for the day, I think that's good news. Daily candle is making its highs and it hasn't yet made potentially its lows. We're happy to see the daily candle push in one direction to start the day. Hopefully then by the time we find liquidity in the upside of that, we'll then be able to get the short, or the candle then create its low for the day. And even if this candle closes in terms of a doji, sort of rejecting that 4-hour 50 EMA towards the upside, but rejecting the daily 50 EMA to the downside. At least we'll be somewhere in and around this region, which is probably, at least towards break even, or at least by the time we get a good looking stop loss, somewhere in and around this region should be a nice 1 to 3 at the least. So I think GU is looking nice. If we can gain a nice entry, 10 to 15 pip stop loss, that'll look quite nice in terms of the technicals already. So I like GU, much like the others, got some alerts going on in the area, and I'll just see how that develops to look for a short position if able. In terms of the longs, what do I have in terms of long? Any Asia range looking positions? Well, from this area here, we've certainly broken structure points to the left. And if I can see if there is a 50-minute order block down at these lows, where am I in a higher time frame? Not too concerned. So really it's in and around this region where I'd be looking to find a 15-minute order block for a potential Asia range fill to the opposite direction. Let's see if that is available. And if it's just kind of in the middle, I'm not really too interested because it's just not clean. So there's a 15-minute order block of there. It's not available just. And there's nothing else, to be honest, as we start to work our way back up. The wicks are just coming straight back to mitigate those order blocks. So there is an order block here. Let's put it in just for argument's sake to see if that makes sense. There's the only 4 hour, oh, excuse me, only 15-minute order block available. Um, I don't mind that actually, because by the time, let's say, for a good example, price comes down here, we'll have the confluence of the 4 hour 50 MA to reject towards the upside. So if Asia is available, it might be one that I'd look to consider based on just 15-minute price action and structure. In the back of my mind, I'll recognize the reasons why I could simply lose that position is there are most definitely some imbalances left there behind, but I can't cover everything. It might be something worth taking based on how large the Asia range is. So let's have a quick look now. If we're to go roughly 10 to 15 pip stop. No, it's not really doing it unless Asia kind of pushes up for the next, what do we have, next 8 minutes and starts to print a larger Asia range for me to comfortably get a nice, let's say, 1 to 2.5 towards 1 to 3. Then it might be something I'll consider, but without that range, then I'm not too concerned to be looking to take that. But nevertheless, not too bad. It looks half decent, but I much prefer to wait for a short based on the higher time frame directional bias, which I think would be a nice play. We'll see how the cookie crumbles there. So that's what I got for GU. GCAD. Perfect. Exactly what I was looking to anticipate. You can see, so GCAD, I took a short on GCAD on Friday. Nothing really to scream about. We had price come into the area, retest a nice 1 minute order block up in those highs. Look to then manage the position by the time it got to the 4 hour 50 MA as price had then broken and closed above it previously. I, in fact, managed it way before that and I was taking out break even anyway. So bit of a nil mover on GCAD. But nevertheless, seeing how price is up at those session highs now, I'm not really seeing it as potential short opportunity now based on just support and resistance as this illustration shows. I'm pretty much expecting that kind of triple, quadruple top to be attacked. Liquidity is clearly lying there as sellers just continue to sell blindly from that area. And then we've got exactly that price looking to push through. So I like that actually. I really like GCAD. Much like the rest, I'm not discriminating against any pairs today. If they all present, they can have some liquidity from me today. So higher time frames, let's see where we are. Again, nothing too conclusive. We're just respecting this area in the market. But what I do like from this area is we have had that break of structure on the daily. Again, not really too fussed about structure on the daily, but when you can see a clear break of structure coming from an order block and prices failing to break above, I think it's fair to say that I'd be expecting a bit of a rejection from it if price looks to come back to that area. Of course, you can see price come back to the area already. We have had a move into the daily 50 EMA. So let's see if price comes back. We can have a bit more of a move as we're looking to operate slightly higher within that range now, and then we can see where we go from there. So that's the daily time frame, definite range down to the daily 50 EMA. In the immediacy, the short positions have to be looking to manage by the 4 hour 50 EMA, but as we can see, 4 hour order book up at these highs. Again, it's the only and probably the best 4 hour order block in the market based on the fact, of course, we're pushing highs, but we didn't break structure to the high. So as we start to make this move to the downside, here, in my opinion, is going to be the most recent low created, and then price to gravitate back up towards that order block that's very much so available, and we'll be looking to get the reaction from that area. So I like it. Just for argument's sake, I put this 4 hour order block in on the market to see how price was reacting, and what we see, or what's evident rather, is and also guiding my reason to believe that this area wouldn't hold is we have closed above it multiple times, and of course with trending above it now. But if you see here, a question that sometimes comes up is, when do you get rid of the order blocks? I keep them on the chart until I'm told that I shouldn't. And my indication of being told that I shouldn't keep them on the chart is when when the candle on the Pacific time frame breaks and closes above it, i.e. first sign here, that's a sign for me to get rid of it. I'm no longer looking to sell from there. And when I put that on the market, you can see exactly the area where that's coming in at the area that most would be looking to take an immediate short position from. But that's already telling me that, well, hold on a moment, Charles, you probably shouldn't be looking at selling from there anymore, because if the 4 hour doesn't want to respect it, then why is the 15-minute time frame going to respect it? So that can now be removed off the chart. Just a nice illustration for you guys. And then looking for price to return to the best looking area, to be honest, this 4 hour order block. And then when we look to refine that, here we are on the 15. Again, is there a reason to go aggressive? Certainly, but is there a reason to kind of give it a bit of a wait? I'd say so too. Up at these highs, bit of a session high going on there. So again, 1 minute break of structure, a conclusive 1 minute break of structure. So as you can see, price is just going to hopefully just trickle its way back up. Have that break of structure to the lows. Hopefully that break of structure comes by way of bearish 15-minute engulfing candle. Start the process again, 15-minute order block. And at that stage, I'll be looking for an immediate short position. So if I get this, I'll be looking for a sell limit straight away, because there's just no reason not to. I don't mind being wrong. From that area, it looks good in my opinion. I've got good range down to the 4 hour 50 MA. Risk reward, it's heavily in favor of risk, excuse me, in reward, I should say. And then that also allows me to have a pretty decent stop loss as well. GCAD, so roughly 20 pips looking maximum, but 20 pips is still allowing you down to the 4 hour 50 minute, at least that 1 to 3, which I think is very important to see if you can capture as many of those as possible. And I think GCAD looks quite nice. Would I take a long position on GCAD? Um, One to consider. What I'll do now is get rid of that, get rid of this, and understand we've made a high in the market. So really for the long, I think the highs come from here as opposed to this area here. So long is going to be down from this area, in my opinion. In terms of the immediate break of structure, looking here now. No, there's just nothing there. I think keep it nice and simple. Of course, you've got the 4 hour 50 MA there, but still, it's not always the reason to look for a position just because you can see the EMA. It has to make sense as well that there are no 15-minute order blocks up, or rather down at these lows. And if I'm to look at taking a position here, straight away you can see why I could be liquidated. We've got those wicks of the lows. And of course, the better position would look to come from the low. And as you can see, we've got a nice 15-minute order block here as well. And so I don't think it would be a smart position to take a long from here. I'll be happy to see price move away from there, hopefully push back up towards the upside, but I won't be involved in the long, unfortunately. So that's GCAD shorts for me. Price is on the way there now, so I think it's looking good. That's GCAD. EU. Okay, so as a result of being heavily short bias on the DXY, I'm no longer really short bias on EU, for now anyway, despite that higher time frame or weekly order block suggesting shorts out of it. I do see that the refined area within that order block is a considerable distance to those highs. So EU for me is a bit annoying. We had this nice high in the market, prices failing to break above, but we can see very clearly now price has got different ideas. We've closed above that area very conclusively by way of 4 hour candle. So where I see that really is high in the market created potential higher low or even potential higher low area here as a result of price now respecting that 4 hour 50 MA, and then we'll be looking for that push up towards the upside. The reason why potential shorts still in the market is the, of course, a higher time frame play, and I mean shorts before we get up to these areas. Daily 50 MA. So we rejected it really, really nicely last week. So looking if price will come back up to that previous daily high. Again, nothing that I'd be looking to take immediately, but it's certainly something that I'd want to have a look at. So we've got that bearish candle there, order block, next one below. I'll put it on the market. It's nothing that probably I'll be looking to take, but like always, I just like to see how price is going to respect those areas. So as a result of seeing price now make that high in the market, what we'll be looking to see is can we get that higher low? So if price comes back in, potentially we could trade that higher low extension, but we'll be straight away running into traffic by way of that 4 hour order block, excuse me, 4 hour 50 May, that price is respecting really nicely. So what I'd be inclined to see, we can see those structure points towards the upside. If price wants to start breaking even here, for example, let's say we get a bearish 4 hour candle close below that 4 hour 50 MA, price starts to develop breaking structure point here, pull back after a 4 hour close, then potentially if there is a 15-minute order block within this area, then it might be a nice looking position as well. But I do think the better position would be to look for those longs on EU, but it's not something that I can take from too close to that higher time frame order block. Certainly, if I'm within it, I can't take it. But I think here, in terms of a reversal looking position, may not be too bad, but it's nothing in a hurry that I'll be looking to take. Even better if we could have that structure point broken, then come back. And then I'll be looking for a nice short position, perhaps. So we'll see how that cookie crumbles. In terms of the long position that I'd want to take at the moment, unfortunately, I mean, there are two areas which that just refines the area very, very uh, well, it's going to be quite a thin trading range, to be fair, if I'm to do that. So 4 hour order block as a result of that 4 hour candle breaking structures to those highs. Now, within this low, can I see a 15-minute order block? That makes sense. I'll put it in first and then ask myself the question, does it make sense? A 15-minute order block just there. And then what I'll do, I'll delete that order block on the 4 and ask myself, does that make sense based on structure? So we can say we've had a high in the market. Can we say a higher low after a higher high confirms this higher low area? Where's a 15-minute order block within that higher low region? The only one available is there below the 4 hour 50 EMA towards the upside. So it could be argued. So certainly in terms of an Asia range position, it's something that I would probably look to consider actually. I think that looks quite clean in terms of stop loss placement and range for the Asia range fill. Let's have a look to see if that makes sense. So that's where I'd like to put my stop loss. I don't think that's feasible. That's where I'd have to put my take profit. In fact, it looks like Asia's already been filled anyway. But for argument's sake, if I get a nice 1 minute break of structure without that having being filled, I think it would have looked quite nice. But if I go to the 1 minute now, where's Asia? Where's Asia? Yeah, Asia. So London opened and yeah, Asia's filled. So unfortunately, I've never seen that. Well, not for a very long time. So we've closed up at the highs of Asia. Next candle opened. So technically, Asia hasn't been filled in London. It's just that the candle closed high, opened. Did it move higher is the question. So there's Asia. No, technically Asia is still available. So Asia, London, excuse me, Asia closed just below the highs. London then opened, or Asia closed, however you want to put it, and then price didn't make that high there. So Asia's still available, which, okay, is potentially one to consider towards those highs. Don't mind that at all. So that's EU. I quite like the short positions if it was to materialize, but certainly up at the, I mean, certainly at the moment, although I won't be able to take the long position, I think EU longs look quite good. Um, but it's just not a favorite for me. If I'm going to look for a short, I'm going to have to look a considerable way higher. Where's that daily order block? Just here, all intervals. Yeah, up at these highs is the best looking short for me based on that weekly order block, refined area down. So I'll play it by ear. I think there's a lot to have a look at. I'll consider both avenues. I think immediately Asia range looks all right. If I can get a decent 1 minute break of structure, I'll just have to then trust this 15-minute order block and then look to manage that quite aggressively as a result of these lows in the market. So not the best, but it looks average, I'd say, for that Asia range position. So I don't mind that at all. And then I think we're on to GJ next. GJ only really one direction for me on GJ. I'm looking at GJ longs. Higher time frame looks good. Certainly coming from the daily time frame. We've got this daily order block that price rejected, also rejecting that daily 50 made to the highs. Once we start to refine those areas down and have a look at structure, we've made a higher high in the market. Price come back for that higher low. At the moment, we didn't quite I'd like to see this 4 hour candle close so we can have that confirmation on the 4 hour time frame that we're not just rejecting those highs back to the downside and then kind of falling back into this range that we have. But for me, we've broken out quite conclusively on the way to make a higher high, perhaps. Price and I'll be waiting to roll back down into a point of interest. 4 hour order block remaining at those lows. 4 hour 50 MA supporting the upside. Refine within the daily. Look for that rejection back up to those highs. I think GJ looks quite nice now. I'm happy to share that with you guys. And of course, the GJ shorts from the absolute highs. This daily order block right up at those highs there. Refine. You got the 4 hour order block there. Not looking for an immediate position, unfortunately. I can see that price is just going to smash straight through that initially before then giving us a nice entry criteria. So just one to watch. Still trying to really figure my way around GJ. I mean, the technicals speak for themselves, but whether or not price does give you those pullbacks, which at the minute it is somewhat. I took a sell limit on GJ last week on Friday actually. Bit of a nil mover, closed that out before the close of business. So we'll see with GJ, but it's looking good for the longs, definitely for the longs in terms of the short up at those highs. Quite clear to see. In the immediacy, then, if we do get a snap of Asia pullback, looking at what caused that snap, so we'll wait to see if that alert will go off, and then we'll have a look at that. Hopefully that will come by way of 4 hour candle closure towards the upside. That'd be really good for the pullback longs on GJ. And AU, my favorite AU that's just not performing at the moment, unfortunately, as price just wants to push higher and higher into that weekly order block. But that's fine. The higher it goes, the better the selling opportunity, to be quite honest. We recognize a bit premature anyway, but the technicals were really aligning. But actually aligning against the position. Look here on the daily bullish structure, we've only had that one daily candle break and close below, and that was really fueling the bias because that structure break there was what gave us that structure point in the 4 hour, which made us then want to look back to see what caused it. Looking in and around these areas for for a short position, it made sense, right? I don't think there's anything against that at all. However, daily 50 MA, that is really killing the atmosphere. Daily 50 MA price is rejecting it continuously. We only had that one break below. We were using that, as I said, and price is just rocketing off from it. But is that really a surprise? Not really. We understand how the daily 50, all the 50 EMAs work. So when you see it happening, you can understand if I'm going to get in a short, I recognize that this could be very much so short-lived. And actually, I could just start rejecting those EMAs that seem to happen over and over again. Hence why we use it as a confluence and bias in our trading. So here and now, I expect AU to continue slightly higher, to be quite honest, with the weakness of the DXY, what we're forecasting. I do expect AU to push back up to this week, excuse me, daily order block. It's unfortunate I can't be involved in that long position, but AU, as we've started to make those highs now, I think it looks quite good for continued long positions. I will just have to be waiting for price to return up to those highs or refined 4 hour within that daily, which again makes sense if you were to look at this and say, well, ultimate leg. We've made a low from here. We've pulled back up looking for a rejection. Of course, we're using the intricate breaks and we're saying, well, okay, low perhaps, lower high, lower low. That's why we're looking in those regions. But then if we look at big picture, we can definitely understand why price wants to gravitate towards those highs before making that short position down. So with that said, I think the better selling position for me at the moment is going to come from this refined area at those highs. I'll start moving my alerts higher now so I don't get inclined to look at anything immediately. Now, with that said, would I be looking to take a short position if anything else happens? Absolutely. If I can get a candle close below that 4 hour 50 MA that price is looking to respect, what that close of the 4 hour 50 MA should look like would be at least a break of structure. Hopefully, let's say within the week we finally get, and I mean, if price doesn't come up to here, we just kind of hover around. If we get a daily closure below that daily 50 MA as well, that really would make me, well, it would be very straightforward for me then to look in these regions for looking at that continued short rollover. So for now, up at those highs, best scenario. In the next, let's say 4 hours or 8 hours, if we get a bearish 4 hour closure below 4 hour 50 MA, might be something that I could consider. Because we're still yet to retest that daily 50 MA today. So the trade would be using the 4 hour as confluence, 15-minute structure as confluence, and then trade down to the daily 50 MA where we would have to anticipate bullish reaction from it as a result of just looking to the right daily time frame to see what's been going on recently. But I think that could be a half decent position if you could tuck your stop loss above this high area, which should be easy to do. Price comes back up to the area. What's that AU? So roughly 10 to 20 maximum. They're already at 1 to 2, down towards the daily 50 MA. Manage it before you get there. Expect a price to dump below it slightly before the rejection towards the upside. So yeah, I think it could lend to a decent position, but that's most certainly a reversal position to be discussed at the moment, and nothing in the immediacy short for me. I think longs are the way at the moment. Potentially price just creep its way back up. We'll be looking then up at these highs, break, pull back short, very easy, down towards the 4 hour 50 MA at that stage, and then we'll be reliant on the higher time frame bias to kick us down based on that higher time frame weekly order block. So lots of fruitful positions, I'd say, to be honest. Everything has some decent potential. So looking forward to the month ahead, week ahead, potentially even the day ahead. We'll see how we fare. So, wishing you all very good luck for the rest of the day, week, and months, and that's the last month of the quarter as well. So, we'll be able to track some performance soon to see how the quarter has been. But it's been an average one. Again, nothing crazy these days. We can really understand why. The DXY, as we said, just rocketed through a nice point of interest where we'd be looking to expect a reaction towards the upside. It's that kind of stuff that kind of ruined the performance and turns let's say a 7% week into a 3 or a 4, which we still must understand. Expectations are still pretty good. You're doing better than the majority of traders in the market, and most certainly better than investments in the bank. I can definitely confirm that. So all the very best, everyone. Boris, as always, appreciate you for
Thank
joining.
you very much. Good morning.
No problem, my friend. How are you anyway? All good?
Yeah, all good.
Good stuff, man. Keep on the game, and I'll speak to you guys shortly. Take care, my friend. Take care.